Hello, welcome to With Bowl and Spoon, the podcast about people's personal food evolution. This is Carolyn. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Shelley. I am so excited to finally get on your podcast. We've been talking about this for years. My name is Carolyn Ristau, and I have a variety of ways of introducing who I am and what I do. The latest was Zoning Nerd Extraordinaire, which, Shelley, I'm sure will appreciate that.
Do you still consider yourself the Zoning Nerd Extraordinaire?
Yes, I feel like I'm like leaning more into that. At the end of May, I left my last employer to be fully self-employed. It's been a crazy journey for the last, 3 months now? 2.5 months? I don't even know how long.
Is that all it's been?
I know, it's been so short, and yet so much has happened. So I have a consulting firm called Details Reviewed LLC. The latest description of it is it's a land use research and education consulting firm. So I'm pursuing zoning from a variety of angles. I write zoning ordinances. So I started with a client this week on an amendment to their zoning ordinance, and so I've been back to writing zoning codes. It's challenging. And so it's been interesting because my last employer, I wrote zoning ordinances like pretty much all day, every day. And so in the 2.5 months that I've been away from that, this week getting back into it was like, oh yeah, my brain needs to be in a certain space. Like I have to remember certain things. The approach that I'm taking in the ordinances that I write is making sure that defined terms are clearly identifiable. And so in this particular ordinance, we use an initial capital letter for any word that you'll find in the definition section, which is something that Pittsburgh zoning ordinance doesn't have, and was very hard using Pittsburgh zoning ordinance when he came across a term that was clearly intended to be something specific, but may or may not actually be in the definition section. And so taking the time to try and find it, and then you don't find it, and then, it just was hard. My experience in zoning started essentially from my first day as a zoning employee for the city of Pittsburgh. We've talked about this a little bit before, that my background is I have a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Pittsburgh in Urban Studies. And so my concentrations were comparative international urbanism. And I think my other one was the community planning one. The other one was a little bit closer to home. So not just international focus, but planning close to home. Being the crazy person that I am, I took as many writing intensive courses in that process as I possibly could. So you could also say that I minored in some version of writing as well.
One of the many ways in which we are very different.
No, I've embraced writing. That really is my true passion, is writing. And so any opportunity I get to do that, I definitely go for it. But in that program, it was a very excellent program. I learned a lot, got a lot of exposure to different things. I had one course called Planning in the Public Sector that was basically like an introduction to practical planning experience. It was taught by somebody in the field as opposed to an academic professor. And our textbook, I think there was like 1 page or less than a page that talked about zoning. We spent like 15 minutes in one session talking about zoning, and that was it. And the rest of it was a lot of comprehensive planning or other planning approaches, community engagement, things like that. And so zoning had a very minimal role in my actual education. I was aware of it as a thing, knew general structure of like what it did. It's a body of local laws that govern what you can build, where you can build it, and how you can build it. And so after graduating from Pitt, I was very fortunate to have a series of really excellent jobs in community development in the city of Pittsburgh. We have lots of nonprofits and community organizations, and I was fortunate to work for a couple of those over those years. And one of them...
You worked with some really amazing people.
Yes, I did. I was Aggie Bruce's assistant at the Bloomfield Graphic Corporation for, I guess I was at the BGC for a total of 1.5 years. And most of that time was as her assistant. Part of it was before I became her assistant, I was an intern working on their monthly newspaper where I was able to write. And
perfect.
That was a very sweet intern gig. Loved working on the paper, loved being able to go out in the community, see what was going on, and write about it. That opened the door to when Aggie's assistant left. She knew who I was, and so she called me up and was like, hey, do you want to come help me out because Catherine's leaving? And I was like, of course. Like, there's no other answer to this question. So that was really, really awesome. And we did all kinds of crazy and wonderful things. At that point in time, she was supporting the statewide advocacy groups that wanted to legalize marijuana. We raised funds and hosted a gun buyback program, which the city hadn't had for, I think it was about 20 years or 15 years or something since the last gun buyback.
A whole generation.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And the last one had been been basically sponsored by the Allegheny General Hospital on the north side, because there had been a lot of gun violence in that area and the gunshot wound victims coming into the hospital. And yeah, like the research that I did, because I had never heard of or thought about a gun buyback before working for Aggie, and she was like, we're going to do this. And if Aggie says you're going to do it, it happens, basically.
Yeah. Oh, she was such a pioneering powerhouse.
Amazing and wonderful, and never took no for an answer. So I learned lots about gun buybacks, and we hosted one that was just, once in a lifetime kind of experience. And it was sad to have to make the choice financially to leave that position, because that was the only reason why I left, was I needed benefits, I needed a full-time income. So the next nonprofit that I worked for was the East Liberty Development Incorporated. In their own way, they were a very, very different organization, but also pushing the envelope, very innovative. So it was very interesting to see how they were trying to creatively bend the rules, I think is the phrase that I came up with for what they do. But I felt, as a young professional, kind of adrift, because I didn't know the rules, so I didn't have any idea as to how we could creatively bend them, you know? So that is actually what led me to the City of Pittsburgh zoning office. I applied and was offered the job of zoning specialist, was the title. But that's the position that back in the day when we had a zoning counter was the zoning counter. And so there were a couple of us.
Which Richard used to call a dynamic situation.
That's one word for it. That role is definitely a trial by fire role. In some ways, it's a shame that is not available to people anymore, to get that kind of experience. My mom was actually talking to me the other day. She went to her first community meeting about a development project.
Was it the one about Bakery Square?
It was, yes. Which apparently was more contentious than your average community meeting. There was shorter tempers. So that led to my mom and I having a conversation about planning and community meetings and, events like that. And she asked how I am able to be comfortable in the community events and community meetings that I do go to. I'm very strategic in which ones I attend, and is typically only work related. I explained to her that I've had over 3,000 conversations with people at the zoning counter about zoning. And that includes everybody from the architect who doesn't care and who has done this like 20 million times and knows what he's doing. There were people who had never heard of zoning before and had gotten a notice of violation about something on their property, that in a lot of cases they bought their property that way. And so they really had no idea why they were there, and they were frustrated, they were upset, they were often like on the verge of tears. There were other people who were very belligerent and very, how dare you apply this rule to me? I paid my taxes. I should therefore be exempt from other laws because I follow one law, is kind of the argument that they make in that situation.
Well, that also comes from a place of fear, so.
Exactly. Yeah, the zoning office was a very scary place for a lot of people. So I've had a lot of experience talking to people about zoning when they're coming in with any number of fears or concerns. Zoning, as we've kind of talked about, and if anybody who's listening has ever had to deal with zoning, I'm sure you know, it's incredibly complicated, it's difficult, it's frustrating. But we have it everywhere. There are some arguments for getting rid of zoning altogether, because what we have was intended to exclude. The origins of zoning was to exclude somebody. The fundamentals of zoning as we have it today is built on keeping out the other, whoever the other happens to be for a particular area.
Whatever racialized population was the target for that particular area.
The end result also ended up being extremely economically segregated, in addition to trying to keep out certain ethnicities.
That was no coincidence.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. It was 100% intended. And so that intention still lives on in what we have today. And when something is ingrained that deeply, you can't extricate it and still have something left. That's why
you gotta blow it up.
You gotta blow it up, and you gotta start all over with a new philosophy. So the optimistic side is I am going to talk about this, and I'm going to raise the awareness that zoning is intended to exclude, and that's wrong, and it should not be that way. And maybe that will actually one day lead to like totally blowing it up and starting over. But in the meantime, doing what I can to improve what we have until we get enough people on board to completely blow it up.
Okay, you've proven your zoning nerdness.
Yes. I am the Zoning Nerd Extraordinaire. There's no argument here.
Indeed. We're not arguing with you anymore. One of your other titles is author.
I currently have one published book. available on Amazon. Zoning Adventures, a home edition paper chase. It actually started as an inside joke because when you're working zoning day to day, it's tough. There's the emotions that we talked about. One of my coworkers nicknamed us Dream Crushers because people come in with they're finally doing their dream of opening their coffee shop or opening their yoga studio, and then they come into zoning and we're like, well, sorry, you're gonna have to do these 20 things before you can get your dream to come true. So it's hard. And so like at the end of the day, the last thing I wanted to do was read about the history of zoning. And I just did not have the capacity at the end of the day. And so Zoning Adventures kind of came out of, the observations of the emotions and the tensions, both on the applicant side and the staff side, and trying to bring some humor to the situation so at the end of the day we can laugh and release the tension, release the stress, get together and be like, you know what, this whole situation is ridiculous, because at times it is. This book has, as books should, it's got a life of its own, and it's opened doors that I never expected it to open. It's reached people that I never expected to reach. I wrote it for adults, but my mom was one of the first people to give it to children. But I mean, it's an illustrated short story inspired by children's books.
Pigeon.
So and it does have a pigeon as like the primary like character. So it does have a lot of characteristics that when people first see it, their brain does jump to children's literature as opposed to adults. So a couple of the other first people who bought the book apparently ended up buying it for their children when I was like, actually, you were my intended audience. But okay, your daughter's reading it, great. My favorite story actually
Next
is
generation of zoning nerds.
Yes. One of them thanked me for helping inspire the next generation of zoning nerds. I was like, wow, that was not what I intended to do, but okay, let's do it.
Did you not read the story? Okay.
So yeah, my favorite story is the person who told me that he had bought it for his daughter, and she immediately started filling out the form on the front cover. And I am like,
I have to look back at that.
Oh my gosh, like this girl is after my own heart. Of course, there's a form on the front cover. Of course, you fill out the form. Like, naturally, like what else would you do with it?
You're like, does your daughter need a mentor?
So yes, I'm not sure how she filled out the form on the front cover because it's a little small, but the form shows up like throughout the book, so there are definitely opportunities. And through your encouragement, one of my other works in progress that was one of the things that I thought I would be doing this summer after leaving working for my employer, but have yet to make it to, is the working title is Zoning Bloopers and Curiosities. And so it's based on my wall of certificates of occupancies that I collected when working for the city of Pittsburgh, with storage of spent pickle liquor being one of the early ones. And my original thought was to do something like, I think the first working title was like 101 Zoning Anachronisms, Bloopers, and Curiosities. Because I have 101 or more of these. I think is fairly common with writers that you have an idea, you start working with it, and it just doesn't feel right. And I had gotten pretty far along and like had it laid out as like 101, had them listed and was categorizing them. And the further and further I got into it, I'm like, this doesn't feel like the right approach. And I think it was around that time, that was one of the times that you and I got together after I had left the city. And it was after I had published this book and we were talking, and you were like, when are you going to write the book of those certificates of occupancy? And I was like, I've been trying and it's just not working. The format that I'm now doing is sort of like a memoir format approach.
From your time.
Yeah, so it's tying these all together with stories of how I came across them. I have 2 chapters in 75% draft form.
And is one chapter one certificate?
No.
Okay.
I forget how many ended up being in each of these, but like let's say that there's like 6 in each chapter, and I'm weaving them together. One of the other certificates that was on the curiosity side, storage of spent pickle liquor being one. Another one was the Tom Thumb golf course. It's about making zoning approachable and just making people more aware in an approachable way.
Yeah, you've always made it very approachable for me, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
It was awesome. But we have other things in common too, because I did urban agriculture and food policy at the city, and you did zoning, and since I was doing urban agriculture and food policy, we started talking about that. Yeah. Because you have a lot of food history in your own background.
Food has, I guess, had a prominent place in my life for...
air, water, food, we need to survive.
Yeah, we needed to survive, but just
Sorry,
my approach to food has been a substantial part of my life. And it started because I was an incredibly picky eater when I was a kid. As I grew up, I became pickier. In my mind at the time, I had a lot of issues with texture and with taste. So there were things, I can't think of an example right now, that like the taste was okay, but the texture, like I couldn't stand the texture. And so those were like the deciding factors for me as a child as to whether or not I ate something. Looking back, as I've grown older and have learned more about being human, I've been able to see some other patterns of what was going on. And I think somebody, I don't remember who it was that my mom had talked to, because I was a kid and I don't think I was there in the conversation, but my mom has told me at different points that she had talked to people about how picky an eater I was. And I believe somebody did tell her that it is a child's way of having some measure of control, because children really have very, very little control over things. Again, that's not what my brain was telling me. It was telling me, like, this texture is really weird. I can't deal with it. The
psychologists are like, oh, that kid is trying to institute some control in their life. And you're just like, ew! Yeah. Which, somewhere in between may lie the truth. But...
Exactly. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of self-growth and understanding and how to better deal with emotions and processing, because I do crazy things, like I leave jobs and I start my own company. So the baggage that I have as a human really stands out when you make choices like this. So I've been doing a lot of processing. That's a continuation of something I've been doing for most of my life.
That's so insightful, because another thing about you that I think stands out in my mind about how unique of a person you are is everybody talks about home ownership. And you are the only person I know who's bought a house and then been like, nah, I want to rent again.
Yeah.
So that, I think, it says to me that you're very self-aware and that you know yourself. And so now, are you saying that you do these things and then you look back and say, why did I do that? Or is it like you are processing who you are and realizing and then making that move?
It's a little of both.
Okay, because it seems like it's a little troubling to say, like, oh, if you do that, then maybe something was wrong with you. But no, you just know yourself really well. So I admire that a great deal. And also for listeners, because we're talking about evolutions and talking about how we make the decisions we do in our lives regarding, our lives. And food in some ways, which I'm sure we'll talk about eventually
we'll
on this food podcast. But, to say that, people that start their own business might have a little mental anguish they need to deal with. Like that doesn't seem fair.
I mean, everybody has mental anguish they need to deal with. For me, in the portion of the recording that may or may not end up in the podcast, because we were in a car and there was background noise, we talked a lot about how my family and the way I was raised was very much about rules. And that there's basically like one way to do anything. We were generally, it's hard to say because like we seemed at the time to be happy and like a cohesive family. So if you have a happy and cohesive family, like why is the child trying to control things with food? These things don't compute. They don't add up. For me, there's been an evolution. I always felt I had to fix myself because it was wrong that I didn't eat food. And then the first big decision that I made that's kind of in this chain of decisions was I left college in the middle of a semester, which is definitely not following the rules.
Yeah.
I knew that where I wasn't working for me. I don't know that I could articulate why. I thought the way that I could articulate it was that something was wrong with me and that needed to be fixed. And I needed to be in a different space to figure out what that was. So there's this idea of like being in a rules-based family, and the psychologists, or again, whoever it was that my mom talked to, saying that my food choices as a child were a measure of control, and my own internal, like, no, it's because this has a weird texture, whatever it was. Now looking back decades later, like I can see like all of those were true. And so one of the like most poignant illustrations of this is I remember as a young child eating peanut butter off the spoon. Like that was something I did and I loved it. But by the time I was in school, I couldn't stand the smell of peanut butter. If anybody had brought a peanut butter sandwich to lunch, I could smell it from across the table.
Ew. That's
like peanut butter M&Ms, I could smell those a mile away and it's giving me a headache. So all along I was like, this is so weird. I remember eating peanut butter off the spoon and liking it, but I cannot stand the smell of peanut butter. That continued all through grade school. So the thing that I see now, again, decades later, looking back with the growth that I've done, the processing I've done, that's a lot of what I've been doing, is processing my life, my experiences, and the emotions that went along with that. Because rules don't leave much room for emotions, basically. When I was 5, my dad left his job, his career, his profession, and his vocation. He completely cut all ties, went back to school and got a PhD in a completely different field. His last position in his first career was an incredibly toxic situation, and he did not have support from his supervisor or the next up. It was just a really, really bad situation. And having been through some of those now myself, I understand the toll that takes on somebody. So this is what the background of my family was as a 5-year-old. But, my parents had a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. They can't have the conversation with the kids of like, here's what's going on. It's tough. We just knew, okay, dad left one profession and he's now going to school to get a PhD and everything's fine. And, we're all together. We're all healthy. We have food. We have shelter. We haven't lost anything on the surface. But again, from what I've experienced myself now, and as I'm sure you're aware, Shelley, like there is turmoil in that kind of situation. And even if it's for the best or for better, there's still so much going on underneath the surface.
A lot to process.
A lot to process. And somehow, they do say the kids are very intuitive. They can sense things. So I can't help but suspect at this point in my life that I stopped eating peanut butter when my dad left his job and went back to school to change careers, because something was up. And I had no way as a 5-year-old to express that or to process it or deal with it. I had no idea. So it sort of became, peanut butter somehow became the thing that embodied this.
Okay, that's wild.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But, it's the only thing that, this occurred to me just a few years ago. That I was like, wait a minute, this whole peanut butter saga, it started right at the age that I was when my dad made this big shift in his life professionally. All I remember is eating peanut butter and enjoying it, and then the next memory I have is I can't stand the smell of peanut butter. I don't have any intervening memory of peanut butter.
So how do you feel about peanut butter today?
Oh, I love peanut butter.
Oh, excellent.
But peanut butter is such a wonderful food item for me to describe my food evolution, because it shows I got increasingly picky as I got older. Pasta sauce is the other one that we have photo documentation evidence that I enjoyed pasta sauce as a kid, because, pasta sauce leaves a mark. And, as a kid,
all kids have those pictures.
Right, yes. So we have those pictures that are photographic evidence that I loved pasta sauce once upon a time. But again, in school age years, I only ate pasta with butter. Let me rephrase that. Pasta with butter and Parmesan cheese.
Okay.
That is what I ate. Pasta sauce is another one that, again, I ate as a kid, but as I got older, I could not eat it anymore. Hamburgers are another really great story. I don't think I ever liked hamburgers. I don't know a time when I did, and we don't have any photographic evidence of this. I distinctly remember, again, this is we were at McDonald's. I was of an age where I guess sitting was not the greatest thing, and so I'm standing next to the table because that's what I want to do, stand, not sit. So I don't know what age that is, but 3 or 4 maybe, I don't know. And so my mom had ordered McDonald's hamburger for me, and I'm trying it, a bite or two into it, I declare that I do not like this. The only thing I like are the pickles. And so I was okay, we figured this out. And so for years we would go to the grocery store and be shopping, and mom would be like, okay, let's get some pickles. And I'd be like, are we getting the McDonald's pickles? Because I only like the McDonald's pickles, I don't like the other kinds of pickles. Eventually I learned that I like dill pickles. Mm-hmm. I do not like bread and butter pickles. Yeah. I cannot stand those. For years I called them McDonald's pickles because I had that memory.
That's adorable.
But, my mom would make hamburgers for dinner somewhat regularly. So for me, again, in grade school, putting the hamburger on the bun ruined a perfectly good bun. And so do not put the hamburger
just
on
put
my
the pickles on the bun.
No. Just have the bun on one side of the plate and the hamburger on the other side of the plate. Make sure they do not touch.
Oh,
and then I would
eat the beef. It wasn't the beef that you didn't like.
No, I didn't like the beef, but that was the only way I would eat it, because if you put it on the bun, you're ruining a perfectly good. The bun is great. There's nothing wrong with the bun, but if you put the hamburger on it, you've just ruined the bun.
So you're gonna choke down the hamburger because you have to.
Yes,
but you're gonna enjoy the bun.
I do choke down the hamburger. I slather it in Heinz ketchup in order to force it down, and I force it down. But the bun, put some butter on it, and it's great. It's wonderful. So that was one of the pseudo compromises that we had in the food world was, okay, fine, I will choke down this hamburger, but do not put it on the bun. And there were a couple times when my mom forgot and she put it on the bun, and I was so mad because then the hamburger juices got in the bun, and like the bun was so great before we did that. Anyway, so again, very, very picky.
So how did you get out of that? How did you?
So
come
again,
around?
when I was,
because you eat a lot of great food now.
Yeah, when I was 19 was when I chose to leave college in the middle of the semester. So I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and who I wanted to be and things like that. And so,
as most 19-year-olds are trying to figure out.
Right. And so I moved in with my mom at first, and it was just not a good place for me to be at that time in my life. And so then I moved in with my dad, and it was living with him and his wife for a few months, and then had a stable enough job that's like, okay, it's time for me to get my own place. And so I moved out and had my own apartment in various apartments over the next couple of years. The stable job was working in a grocery store. So now like I'm living on my own, but I had been making my own meals, I'm pretty sure, since I left college. So like when I moved back in with my mom, it was okay, but we do our own things. Like she was done making 2 meals to make a meal for her and for me. Like we were past that point. So I made my own food. After I got the job at the grocery store and living in my dad's house, and I'm making my own meals, but I'm making pasta with butter and Parmesan. And that meal of pasta with butter and Parmesan would be half a package of pasta with butter and Parmesan for that meal. And then so like maybe at lunch I'd eat half a box of pasta. Dinner I would eat the other half of the box of pasta. And so I was consuming a
pound of pasta a day.
Yeah, basically, which is a lot.
With no vegetables.
No vegetables.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started putting on some weight. And maybe it was the weight gain or something, but I decided like I need to learn to like more food. And I went about learning to eat more food. I think I started with an approach like, I mean, obviously I like pasta. That was something that like I could start with, and I could start adding things to the pasta.
It's what all picky kids love is pasta.
Right. And like one of the things I remember is we would take picnics as a family when I was a kid, and my mom would bring pasta sauce, and there'd be 2 versions. There'd be the one for everybody, and then there'd be the one for Carolyn. But it wasn't that I didn't eat any vegetables, but I had very limited vegetables. And so the pasta salad that was for me was pasta, Italian dressing, and carrots. And it's like, I like that. So as now this young adult, like trying to find myself and find my place and find a healthier way to eat, I use the pasta salad concept as my mechanism. And so, I knew I liked pepperoni, for example. And so like I would get a stick of pepperoni and the carrots and the pasta and the dressing. And then I started adding, maybe one at a time, but like I would experiment and I would put something else in it. And I started realizing that, there's a lot of other really great foods out there, not just pasta. I also got better at like portion sizing. And so, so it was very hard for me to find a way to like rice. But again, several years later, after moving to Pittsburgh, after starting at Zoning, through the city, got connected with a nutritionist who I've been working with ever since.
Our wellness program through Richard Butler, right?
Yeah, it was related to the wellness program. Early on in working with this nutritionist, we had a conversation about the rice, because I would be following the meal plan or whatever, the rice meals, like always feeling really hungry or like there were problems with it. And so we talked about the rice that I was using, and he's like, yeah, that brand of rice and style of rice, every single thing of value in rice has been extracted from it. And so it's the easiest to digest. I think it was river white rice or something like that. And so like the germ, the brand, the whatever the next thing is, all of that has been extracted from it. And it's super easy to digest, and therefore it's not filling, and therefore it doesn't provide any, it doesn't have anything. Yep. So of all the rices, that was the least valuable as a food item. And that was the one that I was using. Then I started switching to jasmine and basmati, and I don't have the same issues that I was having when I was using this, like absolutely nothing left to it rice. So now I eat rice. So then I think the other thing that I did in that early stage of like reintroducing foods was I went back to Ragu traditional pasta sauce and tried pasta sauce on my pasta. And it worked. And so now like I eat pasta sauce all the time. with pasta. And so that was one of the foods that I was able to reintroduce. And it was partly because I knew I used to eat it, so that would be a safe thing to like
got
try.
Picture proof.
Got picture proof. This was a thing, and it worked. So yeah, starting in my early 20s, I was intentionally expanding my food palette and reading a ton of leadership and self-help books, looking for a path forward that would be interesting for more than just a few days or a few months. Like I needed something that was going to keep me engaged for the long term in order to build a career on it. Because in school, like I was very interested in like all of the subjects I was taking were great, and like this was great and that was great. And I had regular customers in the grocery store who would keep coming up to me with suggestions of like, oh, you should, like the one that I remember is, you should go back to school and get a degree in international affairs. I was like, yeah, cool. Like I enjoy traveling and like, you know, it sounds kind of neat, but I don't know that's enough because a lot of things sound interesting and sound neat. And so finding the thing that I could like really get into was an extended journey. So I finally think I've got it figured out. And the solution that I come up with was I wanted to solve the problem of vacant property. I knew that there was a lot going on in Pittsburgh because, again, my mom was here in Pittsburgh. My grandparents were here in Pittsburgh. So I had a lot of connections, had heard a lot about what was happening in the city, visited it enough to have seen changes that were going on. And so I was like, all right, I'm living in a small town in Connecticut. There's not much available here, especially now that the car that I had briefly died and I can't afford a new car. You know, options are really limited. So Pittsburgh, I knew, has a great cultural scene. I knew it had decent buses, and they were trying to do things with vacant property. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go to Pittsburgh. It's big enough, but it's not too big because like cities are scary. So this will be good. And besides, they have 1 million universities. So one of them is going to have the degree I need in order to finish my undergrad to get the job. So I come back to Pittsburgh, end up enrolling at Pitt, doing the urban studies program. One of the things that Pitt does that I think is really neat is they have what are called international field trips. While they have like the standard semester abroad thing, they also have these shorter field trips. So it's a single course, typically like 2 weeks. You go and you do that one course for 2 weeks in wherever it is. So
that's really nice. It just gives you a sampling.
Yeah. And so the one that I ended up doing was in Istanbul. And again, like I've been expanding my food palette for several years now.
That's huge.
And that was actually part of the reason why I ended up in Istanbul.
That was a leap.
Yes. That was a very nice arc that you have there with your hand. In a way, like my decision to move to Pittsburgh, like there was a similar thought process of like, okay, Istanbul. It's technically in Asia, but it has enough European influence that I felt that it would be a gradual introduction to Asia. Because at that point in my food journey, I don't think I had started eating any Asian foods yet. But to go to India or Japan or China or, you know, a place like that.
Deep into the Asian continent would have been a big...
Would have been very, very scary for me. I think both from the food perspective and the cultural perspective, everything would have been like completely outside of my comfort zone. So Istanbul felt like pushing the boundaries of my comfort zone, but not too far. There's also like an administrative staff person who comes on this program. And so she had been several times to Istanbul. And so when I expressed my interest, I think that was one of the conversations we had was I was concerned about food. So she let me know that chicken is incredibly plentiful in Istanbul.
Okay.
So I love chicken. Like chicken's great. Okay, good. I know there's one item of food.
Gotcha.
And she may have told me some other things. I forget. But I do remember her saying like there's plenty of chicken in Istanbul. So I go to Istanbul. There is a Subway right around the corner from our hotel. So like Subway sandwich chain restaurant. I think I only ended up availing myself of that one night. And that was the night that we had gone to another little restaurant on the street and I had ordered the chicken. But this chicken had like kind of sizable like red spots on it. And I don't know what it was. I still don't know what that is, but it is something with a pretty potent spice level. And like it was, it had probably been, I guess marinated is the right word, like where it sits in the sauce for a while before it's cooked. So it's ingrained in the meat. And this was like well into our trip. I think this is, you know, like at least 8 days into our trip of 2 weeks. So I had lots of chicken at lots of different places and it had been fine. But this one, the spice I could not handle the spice. So like I had a bite or two and I was like, I can't handle this. And so I ran down the street, got a Subway sandwich, brought it back and ate it with everybody else who was eating the food of this nice restaurant. I think there was one time maybe when I couldn't get chicken, but I got like a steak salad. That was really, really good. The seasonings and things that they used were different and they were delicious, except for this one that had too much of the spice.
That was just you hadn't adapted to that level of spice yet after eating buttered noodles for 15 years. It's hard.
I don't think so, because I have some tolerance of some spices, but there is still a particular spice. Again, I don't know what it is, but I can tell when I have it, and I think it's that same one that I don't.
That's really interesting.
That kind of spice is not in my tolerance, but other spices, like, yes, like I, on a 1 to 10 scale, I have occasionally gotten a 3. I can do that.
Different foods, different spices have different levels of heat for different people. Even like we went for Indian food once with our friends. He's from Texas. And so we had Indian food, and I was like eating it fine, and I was new, like maybe just 3 or 4 years in on my heat tolerance evolution, and he was just like, whoo, this stuff is hot, this is hot, I'm gonna make some Tex-Mex for you. And I was like, okay, cool. So he made this chili, and that blew my face off, and he was fine. He's like, what, this isn't even close to as hot as that is. And I'm like, okay, it's just the jalapeno versus whatever Indian pepper was being used. We had different tolerances for different spices.
Yeah, and I've definitely noticed the spice tolerance thing, because there was a period of time when I was in my house, I would frequently get like Grubhub food delivery, and at that point in my life, chicken tikka masala had replaced macaroni and cheese.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah, so like as a kid, like my comfort food, mac and cheese, Kraft mac and cheese, out of the box, best thing in the world. After I've expanded my palate, that doesn't work for me anymore, and I get to a point where it's chicken tikka masala is the thing. And so there was a nice restaurant with like a good chicken tikka masala near me that delivered through Grubhub. But even though I said like, please use like one spice level, like it's the kind of place that they make the chicken tikka masala of the day. And it, sometimes it was a 3, sometimes it was a 5, or maybe they had 2 batches of it, one at 3 and one at 5. But they weren't making fresh for each person, and so whatever they had was basically what I got. And so there were definitely days when like the spice was really, like for me, really pushing the threshold. I was also getting very frustrated at work, so I frequently needed comfort food, and so I started ordering this like probably at least once a week, maybe even a couple times a week. And I was good at that point at splitting it in half, so I would have it over the course of 2 nights, because portion sizes from restaurants are so big. So, I would be eating this multiple times a week, each week, and I started noticing that, I'm fine with the higher spice level. That beginning of that,
you can develop it for sure.
And then when I stopped needing comfort food that frequently, that tolerance unbuilt.
You reverted back to your intolerance of spice.
Not like 100% intolerant, because I still ate some spicy things. The higher threshold or the higher tolerance level didn't stick when I stopped eating that frequently. But yes, you can change that, as you can change other things, as I've clearly done throughout my life. The other hilarious Istanbul food story is one day at lunchtime, we're out at, it was kind of like a waterfront park, I guess, was where we were. And there was one like food cart, like street vendor. And they were selling hot dogs and hamburgers. We've talked about hamburgers before. And
had you resolved that?
No.
Okay.
So I still don't eat hamburgers. And like hot dogs, I've always loved hot dogs. Like hot dogs have always been on the okay list. We're at this food kiosk thing, and I'm looking at the options, and the hot dogs are sitting in this red soup, and I'm like,
what do you do?
Holy shit. I forget if this was after the spicy chicken or not, but like by this point, like I do have an awareness, regardless of whether it's before or after that spicy chicken, that like
it's red stuff.
Red stuff in Istanbul probably means there's spice in it. Like it's not like a runny ketchup sauce that it's in, or like a barbecue sauce or anything. Like this is a hot dog. What are they doing to hot dogs in Istanbul? I have no idea, because I was terrified of this red soupy thing that the hot dogs were in. Like, so terrified that I ordered a hamburger on the bun with everything on it. Lettuce, tomato. My food tolerance has expanded significantly, but hamburgers were not on the list yet. But the hot dog was so scary looking that I had to order the hamburger. And you know what? Hamburgers are amazing.
That's awesome.
They are so good. But one of the things that they do in Istanbul is they put mayonnaise on everything. Like, we're Pittsburgh based, and so like everything gets ketchup. But in Istanbul, it's mayonnaise. not ketchup. Like when you sit down at a diner kind of place, it's mayonnaise on the table in front of you. You have to request the ketchup bottle to be brought out. That's their approach to everything. And fries dipped in mayonnaise, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. I think this hamburger that I ordered from the stand must have had mayonnaise on it. Lettuce, tomato, onion, bun, hamburger, and mayonnaise. It was amazing. It was beautiful. And so then when we're going out to like our lunch places or our dinner places, I start ordering hamburgers when we go to these places to eat in Istanbul. And again, they come with mayonnaise on them. And they're so good. So I start eating hamburgers. And
it's great.
I appreciate them on the bun. Like it's okay to have them on the bun and have like the lettuce and whatever kind of sauces come along with it. Like this is good. This works.
Cool.
So it took a trip to Istanbul for me to learn to like hamburgers.
That is, wow.
So,
cool.
Had to get that story out there for you.
That's a great one. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for telling that. Fast forward, you were talking about the wellness coach, so you were still kind of figuring stuff out.
So the nutritionist, my first visit to him was because I had decided to do the half marathon and was trying to figure out like how do I... Because I was never that physically active.
I'm all excited because this is the timeline that I was part of.
Yes, you knew me at this point.
This.
Like at this point, you knew who I was. We had many conversations. You might have done the bee dance for me by this point in time. I love your bee dance. Yeah, so like I decided to do the half marathon, and I had intended to walk it. But as I was doing the training, I realized that the stress of speed walking for that amount of time was worse for my body than a light jog was. And I had tried off and on throughout high school to run. My PE coach, he had like a program to help people get into running, and so I tried it and it didn't work. So finally in this like trying to like figure out how to do a half marathon in the limited amount of time you get to complete it, I finally learned that I didn't have to run at my fastest speed. Like there were other ways to, because my fastest speed is slower than anybody else's jog, essentially is what it always felt like when we were doing the mile in school.
I hated running, so I have
like,
no concept of...
I would be running all out and I'd be at the end of the line. So it never occurred to me that running slower was okay, until
just a little bounce in your step.
Exactly.
And that's all
yeah,
you need.
yeah. And so it took the like I'm speed walking. This is like not working so well, and so changing the stride, not the pace, from a walking stride to a running stride. That kind of solved the problem.
It lessens the impact, really?
For me, for the way that my body works, that worked better. So I'm doing more cardio and I'm doing more activity, and like my food intake is not working well with this. And so I go and I see the nutritionist and I'm like, how do I eat when I'm training for a half marathon? And so he gave me some tips, and so that was just a one-off thing. I completed the half marathon, but in the course of doing that, at some point apparently I got a stress fracture in my foot, and it took me a few days to realize that.
And you finished it though.
But I finished it. Yeah.
I remember that part.
Yeah.
And then you were like in a cast boot thing for like a year or something.
Basically.
Like.
Yeah, because it was from the marathon was the beginning of May, and by January I was back to fully functional. But it felt like forever. And so at this point, like I've put on a lot of weight. So I try all the tricks that I had done when I was in Connecticut, when stopped eating the pound of pasta a day, started introducing other foods. Like I had extremely great success with losing weight.
Well, you're also 10 years younger at that point, so
no, I was only about 5 years younger.
Oh, okay.
But I was also working in a grocery store where in my 5-hour shift I got 10,000 steps. So I was very mobile, and just changing up what I ate, like the pounds just melted away. And so I go into this latest post-injury weight loss convinced that it's going to be that easy again. It wasn't. To be fair, like at this point I do have a Fitbit, and I was still working the counter at that point, and I was on the side of the counter that was the furthest from the copier, because we were in a paper-based system. Everything was paper, and so I had to copy everything. And so every applicant that succeeded in being able to get a permit, I had to walk from my side of the counter to the printer and back. And then, going back to the customer service thing, like I was somebody would come in and we don't have the digital paperwork that we need, but the file room is just next door. So I would run to the file room, see if I could find the documents that we needed, and then come back. So I also got pretty close to 10,000 steps on days that I worked the counter. again, I'm still very mobile. And again, I don't have a car and I'm walking a mile to get my groceries and back. And I'm still fairly active. And, so I'm paying a little bit more attention to like my portion sizes and things like that. And again, I eat a lot more variety of foods. So there's vegetables, there's protein, there's carbs. And, I'm doing a pretty good job of all these things. I lose a few pounds. And then it stops and I plateau and I keep saying plateaued. And I'm like, what? Like, it was so easy last time. And so then the wellness program at work, there was an announcement that, if your BMI is such and such amount, you can have free nutrition visits through the insurance. And I was like, cool, I don't know. So I went and my BMI was in the right category in order to qualify for the fully covered nutrition visits. That started my monthly visit with a nutritionist that has continued ever since. And a lot of people are like, well, why are you still talking to nutritionists? Like,
no, I was just wondering because you don't work for the city anymore. So how do you still get those visits with the nutritionist?
Because it is an insurance thing. It's not.
Okay.
It wasn't necessarily the city. The city just told the employees that our insurance does it.
I mean, that's really interesting. How regularly do you meet with them?
Once a month.
Interesting.
Once every 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it feels like I should be seeing him, but I still have a couple more weeks before my next visit with him. And so actually, like, every time I've made a switch, like when I left my last job and was needing to find my own insurance through the insurance marketplace, I run the plan that I think I'm getting by my nutritionist to make sure that he is still covered under the plan that I'm going to get. That is definitely a deciding factor when I have multiple plans to pick from. Is my nutritionist covered? Because not all plans do it. UPMC is not good at covering nutrition. So your look obviously wasn't the, like, what do you mean 7 years later you're still seeing a nutritionist once a month? But a lot of people do have that reaction. We're not dealing with the same issues. Like, our bodies change, life changes. Mm-hmm. Like, his company is called Case-Specific Nutrition, and he's looking at all life factors. He's seen me go from, like, the quiet little city employee who just does her job to this person who has her own business and is trying to shake up the zoning world. He's seen me through, like, the stresses of the jobs that I've had and all these different things. And at different points, there have been different things that we've done through food. So again, like, I started this to lose weight. We lost the weight. All was good. But then I kept seeing him because he kept saying, let's schedule the next one. And I'm like, okay.
It sounds like you've got a food therapist.
Yeah. Basically.
And someone who you talk about, like, this happened or that happened, or I had this reaction or this feeling or this taste or whatever, and then you can talk it out. And so of all the people that I know in my universe so far, that makes sense for you because you are very inquisitive, you are very self-aware, and I can imagine that you guys have tons to talk about because you're just so aware of things. And I love that for you.
Like, we have a really hard time keeping to our scheduled appointment length. But I mean, among the things that he's helped me figure it out, like early on, I forget why, but we were having a conversation about something that was happening with me and food. And he was like, what I think is going on is your body doesn't produce enough of the enzymes that break down vegetables. And so if you take Beano, the pill has the enzyme in it. So it adds that enzyme to your system if you don't already produce enough. I mean, ideally you take it before you eat, but you can also take it right after you eat, and it still works. He does a lot of speaking and, like, avant-garde. Yes, he's in Pittsburgh, and he's very avant-garde in the nutrition field, which is another reason why I enjoy working with him. He told me this, and so, like, that was probably early on, so 6.5, 7 years that I've been taking Beano when I eat raw vegetables. And it works great. And about 4 or 5 years before I started working with him, I had gone to my doctor because I was having intestinal pain and had pretty much every test under the sun. I had, I don't know what the easy ones were, but, like, I had the early easy tests. I had blood tests. I had CT scans. I had a colonoscopy. Like every test until, like, they got through the list and they're like, all right, the only thing left is an exploratory laparoscopy to see if it's your appendix. And if we're in there, we're going to take out the appendix, whether or not it's causing any issues. And I was like, well, that just sounds stupid. And so I said, no, we're not going to do that. The pains ended up subsiding. But throughout the course of all these tests and things, like, I had explained to the doctors, because this was right after Istanbul. So at the beginning of that summer, I had gone to Istanbul for 2 weeks, like, expanding my food palette. And
brought hamburgers
hamburgers were in the mix now. Salads, like vegetable salads, were, like, a big thing for me that summer. So most dinners, I was having a full vegetable salad for dinner. And I was eating a lot of mayonnaise because Istanbul had introduced me to the beauty of mayonnaise. Like, forget ketchup, mayonnaise is the thing. By the end of the summer, like, I'm having these intestinal pains. And so, like, I tell the doctors, like, I've changed my diet. and I eat mayonnaise now, and like I eat vegetables now, and like, and they're like, whatever, don't touch
Diet couldn't have anything to do with stomach pains.
Yeah. So again, like the pains subside, and so I'm fine for years. And then, I go and I start working with this nutritionist again, like 4 or 5 years later. And he's like, oh, have Beano before you eat raw vegetables. And I was like, wait a minute. I was having a giant portion of raw vegetables every night, like night after night. My body can't break it down. No wonder I had intestinal pain. If I had known about Beano, I wouldn't have needed to have a CT scan and a colonoscopy. And like, I never have pain like as bad as that one summer. But if I like run out of Beano or don't take it with me and I have a lot of vegetables, like, yeah, like I feel discomfort. As long as, because I had salad for lunch today and I made sure to take my Beano and I feel fine. And so it's things like that are the reason why I keep going back to him. Like, I don't, there have been various times where I'm like, I really don't know that I need any food guidance right now, but why stop? And like, we do talk about more than food. So I can talk to him about the stresses of my life and my work and different things. Several years into this, so this is December 2019, I have feminine difficulties. I've had very, very severe symptoms all my life. And so I found hormone treatments that help. By December 2019, I was starting to have the old symptoms start to kind of like peek through sporadically, like very randomly. I would have cramps, but I wouldn't be having a period or, just here and there. And it wasn't consistent or anything. Just weird stuff was happening. And so like one day, December 2019, I have my nutrition appointment and he's like, how are things? And I'm like I had cramps last week and I'm really, they were bad and like, it's just not, I don't know what's going on. And he's like, well, have we ever talked about the FODMAP diet? And so FODMAP is FODMAP. So FODMAP is fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So FODMAP. The goal of this is to be low FODMAP. I've heard it explained elsewhere that these are short chain carbohydrates, and depending on how your digestive system works, they ferment in your gut more so than other foods do. And that causes discomfort, inflammation, and other issues. And so the low FODMAP diet is basically an anti-inflammation diet. And it's an elimination process. So you start out and you basically eliminate all high FODMAP foods. And so you only are eating low FODMAP. And so you get a good solid base. Your gut becomes very happy if this is the right process for you. Your gut, like instantly within days, I just felt so much better.
Give me an example of what a low FODMAP diet would be. Like, what would your breakfast consist of, and lunch, and then dinner?
Incredibly complicated. You can eat stuff in all food categories.
So we have to be zoning geniuses like you to be able to live by this low FODMAP diet.
So
I see you don't have a dummies guide in the books that you have here about this.
I'm sure there is a version of that. I think he gave me like a cheat sheet, like a table that was stuck on my refrigerator for years of here are grains, low FODMAP, high FODMAP. Here are fruits, low FODMAP, high FODMAP, vegetables, low FODMAP. And
so, for example, like oatmeal.
Sample week menu.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
there you go.
Exactly what I was asking.
That's what you were looking for.
You should have a tab on this. Okay, you'd have porridge for breakfast, banana bread, brown rice porridge, but still porridge. I can visualize
a variation of it. So the ingredients that you use in it are going to be important. So the brown rice porridge is one of the recipes in this book, and so so you can have porridge. You can have
peanut butter quinoa with oats.
Yes.
Scrambled egg and toast. I mean, yeah, that's very. There's granola and milk. There's even a pancakes recipe, and I'm sure it's got certain ingredients in it. Whatever.
Yeah.
But that's really reasonable.
The names look really reasonable, but then when you get into it, it's like, well, milk doesn't actually mean cow's milk.
Oh, right. It says lactose-free milk.
Yes.
Let's see. So there's chicken soup, Greek quinoa salad, Caesar salad with chicken salad with pecans and grapes. I mean, it sounds ever fried chicken fingers with mustard dipping sauce. Those are lunch. Then for dinner, you could have like pot roast. Oh, and they give you this. I noticed one of them said leftover pot roast sandwich. So you have dinner of pot roast, and then the next day you have it for leftovers. And you got tilapia with tomato pasta. I'm assuming that's like gluten-free. Okay. Salmon with sesame spinach rice. Yeah, I could totally get around it. It seems reasonable, but you're saying it's making specific choices of ingredients in each of these.
There's a lot you can do, but like fruits, for example, all fruits have some amount of high FODMAPs in them. But the ones you mentioned, strawberries and bananas, are low on the FODMAP. I learned a different thing about strawberries. Strawberry seeds are very hard to digest. Our bodies can't do that well. So when I had my giant strawberry patch at my house, I was eating strawberries like multiple meals a day and still freezing
when
some
they're in season.
because my plant produced like gallons of strawberries. And I started having stomach issues. And so because I see my nutritionist every month, I went to him like, I'm having stomach aches, but I'm following the low FODMAP diet. Like, what's up?
Were you keeping or do you still keep like a food log?
No, I'm actually not doing a very good job of following low FODMAP because it does take a lot of intention. You can't buy pre-made low FODMAP very easily. There is a meal delivery service that, actually there's 2 of them that I know of now, that do produce low FODMAP only meals, but meal delivery services are incredibly expensive, so that's the thing. The best way to be 100% low FODMAP is to make it yourself, make everything yourself. And I mean,
it's the same with like gluten-free stuff, like my mom's celiac, and she finds that the best way to do it is just eat at home. Yeah. She knows everything that's in it.
Yeah. And I enjoy cooking, but my life has been such for the last several years that I don't have the capacity when I come home to do that. So I'm still aiming towards low FODMAP, but I'm not 100% low FODMAP. And not everybody that this works for needs to be 100% low FODMAP. The idea is you'd go straight all out low FODMAP for, I'll explain in here, I forget how many weeks you do. Just set your base, settle your stomach, get a very good solid foundation. And then you try adding things in to see what works for you and what doesn't, because some of the things work for some people. So I did the full elimination. I started reintroducing foods, and I don't remember how many things I reintroduced. Not a whole lot, but like everything that I did, instantly I felt terrible. Energy levels changed. My stomach was unhappy.
And were you introducing new foods based on this, or just like new foods that you always ate and you're like, maybe I could eat this again?
If
it wasn't low FODMAP.
Right, yeah. So reintroducing higher FODMAP things and like testing out to see like what portion size your body is capable of handling. So these were all foods that I had eaten before, and I was trying to figure out, can I eat a little bit of honey? And I tried a little bit of honey in my tea or something, because that was something that I liked doing every now and then. I mostly drink tea straight, but sometimes I like a London fog. And I had a little bit of honey, and like, I don't remember if I got diarrhea or what, but like, that kind of stuff happened like instantly. And I had just bought like all kinds of really great local honeys, and so like I had this great collection of honey. It was instantly clear. I think I did try like a couple times, took a break, tried it again, and same thing. And so, but that's why it's important.
You know for sure that it was the
honey. because I had that solid base, that I felt fine and I felt good, and then I only introduced honey and did not feel good. So I tried that with a couple different things, and everything I tried it with, I had a bad reaction. And at that point, I was in another one of my transition phases where I'm trying to figure out like what I'm going to do. I've started my business, but I'm still working part-time. What's the balance? I'm writing my book, so I've got a lot of other things I'm working on. And so doing a very fine grain, like trying every single food type and reintroducing it to figure out what level of tolerance I have for which things. After trying a handful of things and they all were not good, I was like, I don't have the capacity to try and figure out if there are some things that I can reintroduce. So I stuck with 100% low FODMAP, because at that point in time I did have the capacity to like use this cookbook and make my own food with ingredients that I knew I was able to tolerate.
But when you were doing that, when you're following that diet, you feel good.
I felt good. I had energy, way more energy than I have on average. So
it's not just the discomfort; it was that you felt dragged down and lacking energy. Interesting. Okay.
I didn't need to eat nearly as much. I think before that I was eating 6 meals a day. After I got into it, I was eating 4 meals a day, and I felt fine. Yeah, and like my allergies, I have seasonal allergies, and I didn't have allergies that spring.
Oh wow.
Nothing noticeable.
So do you think the reason that the FODMAP works for you so well is also the same reason that the Beano works for you? Maybe there's the enzyme that's not able to break stuff down for other foods, not just the vegetables?
My nutritionist hasn't talked about it being an enzyme, but it is that my body cannot digest certain foods effectively.
Interesting.
But there isn't a Beano equivalent solution to these other food types.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's really interesting.
Wheat is an issue. It's the carbohydrate in wheat that's the issue. And that carbohydrate is very similar to the carbohydrate in onions and garlic.
Oh, right.
And
you were saying you can't have onions and garlic. That would kill me.
Yeah. This is where like things get wonky with the FODMAP diet. Is garlic infused olive oils are mostly okay because it depending on how they're processed. But like the oil in the garlic and the onion is fine. It's the fleshy part where the problem is. So I could saute garlic in a pan and then remove the garlic.
Oh, as long as you don't ingest the actual thing, you can have the benefit of it.
Yeah, so I can still, I keep a bottle of garlic infused olive oil around so that I can still get garlic flavor when I'm cooking. Corn is another weird one. Cornmeal is fine, so like corn flour, corn tortillas, things like that, corn chips, all those are fine. But corn on the cob, not fine. So there's a lot of like weird quirks that go along with it that like high FODMAP foods, depending on how you eat them, it varies.
So basically it works for you.
Yes.
This FODMAP diet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really great when I'm able to stick to it. And, it's not just the digestive system, it's my nutritionist describes it as we have like an inflammation bucket. There are various things that can trigger inflammation in our bodies, but you only have so much space in that bucket before it starts to cause complications. Allergies are something that trigger inflammation, and the way that my body digests high FODMAP foods triggers inflammation, and whatever that causes my migraines is triggering inflammation. And so all of these things are filling up my inflammation bucket until it's overflowing. And so by doing the low FODMAP diet, I've cut out that inflammation. And so the allergy symptoms don't get as severe. The migraines don't get as severe or happen as frequently.
Oh, okay.
And my body just overall works better. It works great for me. And it sucks that it takes so much time and effort to be able to stick to it. It's a little bit easier than it would have been 10 years ago to not be inundated with high FODMAP stuff. Like there's gluten-free rolls and things that are available now. So like at some restaurants, like when you're going to get a hamburger, you can get a gluten-free bun option.
What about the sugar content in some of the gluten-free stuff? Is that a concern or is that not?
I mean, yeah, like added sugars, like you don't want to do added sugars just in general. Some of the gluten-free things actually aren't low FODMAP, so that causes some challenges as well. You can get cauliflower pizza crust and it's gluten-free, but it's actually not low FODMAP. Cauliflower is
like a really
high FODMAP.
Crazy idea to me. Like I've never been a fan of that. Although I have always been a person who steers away from fads or trends, and so that's one of them. Cauliflower rice, cauliflower whatever.
Right. Yeah. Rice crackers. Those are good because it's a rice-based thing, and rice is low FODMAP.
And it just happens to be gluten-free, but that's not the point.
Right. That's not the point. That's how it's marketed because somebody's decided that marketing gluten-free is a moneymaker. But most people that gluten-free things work for, according to my nutritionist, aren't actually having issues with gluten. They're having issues with the carbohydrate in wheat.
That is a very complicated topic.
Yeah, it's a complicated topic because there are people that are extremely sensitive to gluten, but most people, it's actually not the gluten. Again, one of the weird things about this low FODMAP is wheat is a high FODMAP thing, a high FODMAP food. But when wheat goes through the sourdough process, the sourdough starter eats the short-chain carbohydrate for you, so you don't actually have to digest that part. So sourdough
that's cool.
is a safe wheat product for me.
I love that because sourdough is better anyway.
Yeah, sourdough is great. And so we have a sourdough bakery now in Pittsburgh, and
Driftwood?
Yeah, Driftwood.
Okay.
I don't know when it opened, but I was meeting a friend in Lawrenceville, and she was like, "Oh, can we stop in here? I want to grab something." I was like, "All right." And I go in and I'm like, "Wait, this is a sourdough bakery. They're a pizza shop, and their crusts are all sourdough crusts, and they make sourdough breads, they make sourdough cookies, they make, so much, most of their stuff is all sourdough based." And so I was just so thrilled that I didn't get anything that day, but I was just like talking to the person at the cash register. I was like, "This is amazing. This is so wonderful. I'm so excited because I have this diet that I'm on, and sourdough is the only wheat product that I can eat and feel okay." And she's like, yeah, like so many of our customers, and so like we were talking about the gluten versus the carbohydrate, or that's how I was talking about it, the gluten versus the carbohydrate. And she's like, yeah, like so many of our customers that say like they need gluten-free, they come here and they eat the sourdough and it's fine and they feel fine. It's because the gluten's not the problem. That's just how it's been marketed. And so if you can eat sourdough, you probably don't have a problem with gluten. You have a problem with the carbohydrate.
Probably not celiac. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm glad this works for you. I'm not a fan of calorie restrictive diets. I want to be dramatic and say I've nearly died on them. I've never nearly died. It's just, I felt like I'm going to kill somebody is really what Brett would say. Yeah. My body does not like to be restricted of anything.
That's one of the things that I've liked about working with the nutritionist that I work with is he also doesn't subscribe to like the elimination for the sake of elimination. He understands that our bodies have cravings and desires, and so it's more about finding balance than about restrictions. And not doing things. I mean, the hardest thing that he ever had me do was in that first weight loss phase where I could have one slice of cheese on my sandwich, or mayonnaise, or I guess avocado.
What if you had half a slice of cheese and half the amount of mayonnaise?
Well, that would have been fine. But
and a little bit of avocado, because fuck you, it's a vegetable. Sorry. I'm not good at this.
Yeah. I mean,
don't make me make decisions like that.
What he had me doing basically was like the breadth of what I ate was fine, but just shaving off the portion sizes a little bit. And I was fine with all of that, but the cheese, man, that was so hard to only put one slice of cheese on my sandwich. And
I mean, can you even taste one slice of cheese in a sandwich?
But I've been thinking about this a lot lately, in part because I am putting 2 slices of cheese on my sandwich right now. And
what?
Yeah, that's because hard cheeses are low lactose, so they're okay.
Good.
The ricotta cheese, cottage cheese, like those are high lactose, so I don't eat those.
Oh, interesting.
Ice cream is high lactose, but oat milk ice cream, oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yes, I've had that.
So I don't feel bad about that. Cow's milk, I don't drink cow's milk anymore. I mean, I suppose I could do like the lactose-free version of cow's milk, but almond milk works pretty well for me, and oat milk. Although oat milk is extremely high calorie and almond milk is low calorie, so.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, totally bizarre. I don't understand how.
Obviously, we could talk all day. This has been an amazing conversation, and thank you so much for weaving this amazing story for me to be able to share on my podcast. Do you have anything else that you want to mention or talk about, or maybe pin for next time?
Yeah, I guess the pin for next time is I need another food evolution at this point in my life.
Wow.
I know that the last year and a half, actually, stress eating has been a major part of my life. And I have put on, to me, an immense amount of weight. I think it's about 40 pounds that I've put on in the last year and a half. And I know it's tied to the stress eating. So I found that I was having a lot more migraines, and Starbucks chai latte with oat milk does a lot to help with a migraine.
Oh.
I don't know why.
Wow. I wonder what that is. That's really interesting.
And it's other brands don't work as well. It's the Starbucks one. Something about the mix that they use and like the stuff they
maybe it's extra caffeine.
That's one source definitely of additional pounds, and just like I would get home
because the oat milk,
yeah, and the sugars, and like I was getting the big ones. I wasn't getting like a little
because somebody else was buying.
No, because I needed that much for my migraine.
Oh shoot! Okay.
I would come home and I would just be so exhausted and just ate to stay awake because I can't go to bed at 5:00. So that was kind of like a habit that I got into. Like I would eat dinner and then I'd be so tired that I would just keep eating to keep myself awake. Just habits like that I developed in the course of this job. And so now that I'm not in that job anymore, I had expected that all to go away. And I've plateaued so to the point where I don't seem to be putting on weight, at least certainly not at the same rate, but I'm not losing weight. And I know that my body doesn't feel good with this much weight on it. I've been trying to focus more on self-care and have had some success with that. I found a really great yoga class. I've also found a Zumba class, which that was why we met later this afternoon as opposed to earlier on a Saturday so that I could make it to the Zumba class. And so I'm trying to get into the pattern of going to that multiple times a week for my stress, for my overall health and sanity, and maybe some weight loss will come of it, maybe not, but I will feel better. Cardio, intense cardio, I have found is the best preventative for migraines for me. I'm fairly confident that if I get into the habit of going twice a week to this Zumba class, over the course of the next few months, the frequency of my migraines should reduce significantly.
How often are you getting them now?
I have one right now.
Oh my gosh.
this storm we're having is...
You've done this whole interview with a migraine?
Yeah. It's a low grade one.
I'm surprised you have the light on though. Sitting in the dark is probably very good for that.
It's okay. Like this one's not developed far enough for that to be an issue, but it's annoying.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, thank you so much though for talking with me, and we'll talk again, and I'll keep apprised of your next evolution,
whatever that ends up being.
Yeah. Thanks, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
With Bowl and Spoon was written, produced, and hosted by me, Shelley Danko Day. Original theme music is by Paula Breeze and Friends. Thanks for listening. See you next time. You're still listening. Oh, good. Isn't this great? I love this theme song. These guys are awesome. Paula Breeze and Friends. I'm sure they're available for weddings, bat mitzvahs, whatever. You can find their information on my website. Thanks for sticking around and listening. This is fun.